Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Those who have been following some of my videos will know that a few days ago, I produced a video showing trucks lining up, and the person who produced the video said there were trucks driving to Beira with lithium from Zimbabwe. I had a lot of criticism from some people that how did I know that it was lithium? And in the same video clip, I had actually played a video of Farai Magu, who has been documenting some of the looting that has been taking place. And in that video, he was talking of trucks leaving Zimbabwe loaded with lithium. And at one point, customs officials at the Zimbabwe border post of Forbes had stopped the trucks crossing the border without the necessary paperwork. And a Zimbabwean official had driven to the border post and told the customs officials in no uncertain terms that they should let the vehicles go through. She holds no government position other than being the first lady. And ever since, reports say that these lorries have crossed the border without any paperwork. The army apparently is now doubling up as customs officers and would dare ask what paperwork they need to produce. Here is a video clip of somebody who is telling us the same story of the lithium leaving Zimbabwe and being exported out of the country.
Upfumi hweZimbabwe ushu ikromi mpoto Mozambique. Isusu vatyairi tisi tinoziva kuti kromu yakawanda sei iri kubuda muZimbabwe. Aya matraksa ari kuvhurita kromu inobva kuZimbabwe. Aya matraksa ndo upfumi hweZimbabwe. Asi nyika yedu haina mari yayo inonzi inotenga kushanda naRTGS. Mune makomo 4 mpoti muno akakura kudai.
The driver was talking of chrome, but no doubt there are also lithium being exported. The main reason really why some of these people took it personally is nothing other than that they object to having anyone talking about corruption and looting in Zimbabwe. In their view, I'm not being patriotic. I'm presenting Zimbabwe in bad light. This has been said by some people. When stupidity is considered patriotism, it is unsafe to be intelligent. This was the American Isaac Asimov. To some extent, he's right. It is becoming very unsafe in Zimbabwe to say anything intelligent. This, of course, does not only apply to SANU-PF die-hard supporters. This also applies equally well to the opposition. At the present moment, on the national agenda is the issue of how Chamisa had lied to the people of Zimbabwe. Last year, that he had the V11 forms to prove that he had won the 2023 elections. This is him making that promise.
We reject this sham result and flawed process based on the disputed figures. We have our V11s. I'd asked our teams to bring those V11s. I'm not so sure if they're here so that you would see them. We've brought V11s from across the whole country, and those V11s are going to be the basis of our assertion. We have won this election.
The truth of the matter is, Chamisa was lying. The team who had done excellent work on the voters' roll was Team Pachelu. And he wanted to give the impression to the nation that Team Pachelu was now working with him. And they were doing a separate compilation of the results. A few days ago, Team Pachelu produced their report. And that is a year after the election results were first declared. But in their report, they made it very clear that the V11 they were able to collect showed that Mnangagwa had won the elections. I think they didn't want to say that this time last year because they did not want to contradict Chamisa that he had the V11 forms. They knew he didn't. Or at least they knew that they did not have the V11 forms. In a follow-up report of that, Freeman Chari, who produced that report for Team Pachelu, has made it very clear that the election process was flawed. They only managed to collect 84% of the V11 forms, but could not collect the rest. And some of those that they failed to collect, they found ZEC had not produced any voters' roll for those polling stations. And some of those polling stations had come up with results that clearly shows that there was definitely, the election process was rigged. Altogether, there were about 11,000 polling stations and about 5 million registered voters. Roughly, one would say you're looking at each polling station should have about 500 voters, registered voters. In the end, polling stations never really had 100% voter turnout. And yet some of these polling stations, which Team Pachelu could not get the voters' roll of those polling stations, they got the V11 forms which showed that Mnangagwa had a staggering 999 votes and Chamisa had 0. So if we work backwards and say all these other polling stations, of which there was a voters roll, they had 500 registered voters. These polling stations, which did not have a voters roll, had twice as many registered voters. And surprise, surprise, they had 100% voter turnout. I think it is just asking for too much. Clearly, there was rigging here. But what Team Pachedu have done is show that Chamisa was lying and that the whole point of participating in flawed elections was misguided from the word go. It was foolish to have done so. But when some of us have said, this is foolish, the amount of abuse one has received from the so-called Chamisa Chete Chete Brigade is frightening. And that's bringing me back to Isaac again. It's advice. When stupidity is considered patriotism, it is unsafe to be intelligent. I have to say here that I do not agree with his argument. I do not agree with that argument. I think it is, yes, unsafe when confronted with people pushing an agenda which is purely stupid, their stupidity or their failures and their lies. And they're using patriotism as just as a cover, as an excuse. I think it is not clever at all for Zimbabweans to demand that any journalist who is going to report about the wholesale looting that is taking place in Zimbabwe must produce the evidence when they know the regime is doing everything in its power to make sure that there is no evidence. We know there is looting. A mountainside is disappearing. It's not as if it's rainwater, which you can say it has evaporated. These minerals are solid materials. In some cases, we see a big hole. There is no lithium or chrome melt processing plants in Zimbabwe. And we see lorries leaving the country. I think it is important that we should acknowledge what is happening here and not allow those with their selfish agenda to impose the foolishness of thinking that if we somehow bury our heads in the sand and pretend we don't see what is happening, we are doing the nation a great favor. I therefore do not subscribe Asimov's argument that when stupidity is considered patriotism, it is unsafe to be intelligent. I think the stupid are using patriotism just as an excuse to cover for their stupidity. And those intelligent people who accept to be cowed down by these threats from these stupid people, I think they too are using the threats as an excuse for their cowardice. Indeed, I believe there is a bigger price, in fact, to be paid for doing the wrong thing. And in this particular case, the wrong thing is believing that one is safe by allowing stupid things to go out, to carry on. The looting of the country's minerals, they're being patriotic, but pretending that is not happening. The allowing of the country to be dragged into meaningless elections to give ZANU-PF legitimacy, as the opposition have done. They have failed to implement even one token reform in the last 24 years, including 5 in the GNU. Chamisa lied about plugging the vote rigging loopholes to justify participating in last year's elections. That is a fact. We are not being patriotic at all by sweeping that under the carpet. We're being naive. I totally subscribe to Benjamin Franklin's position on these matters. And Benjamin Franklin's argument was those who would give up essential liberties to purchase a little temporary safety deserve neither the liberty nor the safety. He was right. Those who bury their heads and pretend the looting of the country's wealth is not happening because they don't want to embarrass the country, they're being very short-sighted. Because for one thing, the looting, the wholesale looting that has been taking place of Zimbabwe's riches by the ruling elite is what got us into this mess. Mnangagwa, I believe, must have spent at least $5 billion in last year's elections. Where did he get the money from? From the looting, of course. The Al Jazeera documentary, The Gold Mafia, showed that Mnangagwa, that Zimbabwe's gold processing is worth $2 billion a year. And yet 80% of that is smuggled. $1.6 billion is being smuggled. And in that documentary, there was no secret that Mnangagwa himself was involved in the looting. And then, of course, it's not only gold. Talking of lithium, platinum, gold, diamonds. The man is loaded. And he used some of that to bribe the various individuals involved in the elections. So instead of the mineral bounty becoming the ticket to Zimbabwe's economic prosperity, it has become a curse, because that is now the source of money the regime, the corrupt ruling elite are using to keep themselves in power. I repeat, I totally subscribe to Benjamin Franklin's argument on these issues, that those who give up essential liberty to purchase a little temporal safety deserve neither the liberty nor the safety. And I think the reality on the ground speaks volume. Zimbabwe is a failed state. If we thought by letting Mugabe and his cronies do as they please, we purchase for ourselves safety, there is no safety in Zimbabwe today. The country is in a serious mess. And indeed, the regime has dug itself. Flushing it out is not going to be a walk in the park. The opportunity to end the ZANU-PF dictatorship has been wasted. The golden opportunity of 2008 to 2013 during the GNU was wasted because Morgan Tsvangirai and his MDC friends sold out. And to bury our heads in the sand and say, oh no, we should not criticize Chamisa and company, is to fail to understand what is it exactly we expect the opposition to do. After 24 years, including 5 in the GNU, the opposition, MDC, CCC, have failed to implement even one token reform. And there's the reason why ZANU-PF was able to blatantly rig last year's elections. And to bury our heads in the sand is, to say the least, naive. Zimbabwe, the people of Zimbabwe, we need to do the right thing. We need to stop fooling ourselves that it is unsafe to speak up against some of the stupidity that is happening in society. Those behind the stupidity are selling it as being patriotic. There's nothing patriotic about it. It is foolish. Stupidity is stupid. In the long run, we pay dearly for it. And we in Zimbabwe have paid dearly for it. Zimbabwe, by all right, should be a rich and prosperous nation. We are not, because of 44 years of corrupt, incompetent, and tyrannical ZANU-PF rule. And 24 years out of those 44, because MDC, who was supposed to implement reforms to stop ZANU-PF breaking the reforms, sold out. We cannot ignore those problems anymore. We must deal with them. Zimbabwe is not going anywhere until we deal with these problems. Thank you very much. Have a good day.